The Pursuit of John Wilkes Booth by Wes Crawford and Ryan Haleman is a deep dive into the history of the chase for Lincoln's assassin. Can you bring him to justice? Let's take a look at this game here today on Legendary Tactics. The Pursuit of John Wilkes Booth is a 1 or 2 player game about the aftermath of Lincoln's assassination. The police and detectives and cavalry forces in Washington, D.C. are doing their best to track down John Wilkes Booth, the assassin. And this game is a very interesting design. There are hints of games like Fury of Dracula or perhaps Scotland Yard in this game. So if you like those two games, you might want to take a look at this one. It has a more historical flavor, though, obviously. There's lots of research that's gone into this one, and you can learn about all the people and events that were part of that aftermath. Now, there's a Booth trail deck, which basically dictates the trail that Booth takes to escape, as well as the movement along that trail. And then we have some Stanton cards. These are cards which essentially give you like a bonus. You can, instead of moving for a turn, you can take 2 of the Stanton cards, and these are very useful for that purpose. There's also some other cards here that are used in the 2-player game. There's also some detectives that each have special abilities that you can utilize to help track down Booth. Then there's lead cards, and these are cards that you want to fulfill by basically moving detectives and sometimes police to certain locations. And once you complete that, you get a certain amount of clue tokens, which can help you follow Booth's trail along the stretch. And so there's a bunch of different decks here that you're going to be working with, and it's the interaction between these different elements that create the narrative of the game. So the rulebook is not too bad as far as rulebooks go. It's a fairly clear setup. I'm a big fan of having some more indexing, though, just to make sure you can look up rules more easily. There's also an example of play and some designer notes. Gotta love those designer notes. And some player aids, very simple player aids, just for the use of, summarizing the rules when you're in mid-game, and they're very helpful for that. And these are the clue tokens. We're going to put those back in the box, as well as some other tokens that are utilized in the game. The map itself is actually printed on a canvas, so it has a very unique feel to it. I quite like the feel of it. Actually, it definitely stands out as something unique. The board is a map of Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area, the different escape routes that Booth could have taken. And so we're going to put this back in the bag and put it back in the box right here. And we're going to then put all these card decks back in the box as well. So there's a die there that's used for potential extra clues that the police can provide, as well as all the meeples, and we'll suck those back into the bag. There's a cloth bag there to draw the clue chits from. And again, just another quick look at these decks as we put them back in the box to complete our reboxing. In fact, it's not a bad idea to keep it in the clue bag as well, just to make sure it's nice and protected. And with that, we're going to put the lid back on the box. And as you might recall from other videos, I like to put games back into the shrink wrap after I'm done with them. It helps preserve them, keep the dust off, and make sure that they're fresh and ready to go for my next play. So you just have to wrap it around a bit, stick it together. It's all in the wrist. You just need a bit of practice. And in fact, we're going to put this game back in the shipping box as well. And we'll put it back in the box. And with that, we will go to an overview of how this game plays. So I thought I'd just go through a quick explanation of how this game works. And you can see that it starts on essentially a map of Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area. And there's the city in the center, and then there are 5 trails leading out of Washington. One of them splits into 2. You have the red and orange trails. And these are potential escape routes that John Wilkes Booth will use to get away from you. You start with a couple of detectives, and they're numbered because they have different unique abilities that can help you out. There's also some police and some cavalry. Police are used basically to resolve certain lead cards, although they have a value for searching and for raiding as well. And this is cavalry, which is used only on the trails and can be used essentially to beef up your searching and raiding for when you know where Booth currently is. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. There are 3 phases to each turn. The beginning of the first phase adds a trail card face down to the next trail space on the Booth's trail track. This is a little bit like, for example, Fury of Dracula, where you're trying to catch up to the latest location of Booth, or I don't know, a little bit maybe like Scotland Yard or something like that. Then you make sure you have a couple of lead cards, and this gives you direction, essentially knowing where to move the detectives and the police within Washington or sometimes slightly outside town. Now each turn as a player you can choose to draw either 2 Stanton cards, which are bonuses. Sometimes they add extra detectives or some sort of special event, or you can move, and you can move any and all police, detective, and cavalry meeples, 1 space as desired. Now if you move the detectives and or police into a space and basically fulfill the lead requirements, you can roll a d6 as well to potentially get additional clue chits from the clue bag, but otherwise you draw the clue chits from the bag that are listed on the lead card. The clue chits have a number on them, and these are added up, and you need to hit the requirement at the top here in order to flip over the trail card to see where Booth ended up. If at least 1 detective is in the same DC zone or trail space as Booth, then the player can do a search action to see if they can track down his exact location. And if the search action in the previous step was successful and Booth is actually found, then a raid can be conducted in an attempt to capture or kill Booth. So it's not enough to know where he is. There's an additional step where you have to actually kill or capture him. So that's phase 1. Phase 2 is a little bit different. First of all, you draw a Booth card from the bottom of the Booth deck, and it will say either play now, in which case you play it now, or you can place it on the search cards or raid card slot as indicated on the card back. You're not supposed to look at this card, as it will be a bit of a random thing for when you actually conduct searches and raids at a later point. And then after that, you choose again whether you want 2 Stanton cards or to do moving and fulfilling lead requirements. And that's phase 2. Phase 3 is nighttime, and it plays out very similarly to phase 2. It's just that there is a search and raid modifier applied to those actions because it is nighttime, so it is harder to search at that particular time in the turn. But otherwise, the sequence of play is the same as phase 2. And then you just keep repeating the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 until Booth is either killed or captured or he escapes. On the Booth trail cards, the color of the number at the top left, if it's the first card in the trail, will let you know which escape route Booth is trying to use. And the icons will show you what sort of movement, whether it's 1 or 2 spaces, changing trails sometimes, or hiding. There's a bunch of things that can happen essentially where Booth is trying to avoid the detectives and trying to avoid being caught. So for the lead cards, in order to fulfill them, players basically just need to move there with the right combination of detectives and police, and then they get the clue chits that are listed on the card. Sometimes Booth's accomplices will be drawn, and if you can resolve that lead, then they go to jail and can't affect the search or raid later on in the game. It's kind of a neat mechanism how that works. So when the search or the raid happens, essentially there's some modifiers that apply. 5 cards are drawn from the appropriate deck that was built from the Booth cards, and there's some modifiers that can take place there as well. And what can happen is anything from the police and detectives being ambushed all the way to Booth being found and either killed or captured. You definitely need to build up some strength in order to take him down. He's not going to go down without a fight. So as said before, the player wins if Booth is captured or killed before he escapes. Booth escapes if he's found to have moved beyond the 7th space of any of the trails, or if the trail has become full with the 9th Booth trail card. You can make it a little bit easier if you want to by adding a 10th slot. And that is an overview of The Pursuit of John Wilkes Booth. This is an historical and solo version of a game like Fury of Dracula, or perhaps an amped up version of Scotland Yard with hidden movement and such. So if you like that type of game, check out The Pursuit of John Wilkes Booth. This is Legendary Tactics.